We have now made our way to question 112 of Prima Secunda of the Summa Theologia as we continue in this treatise on grace. Thanks for joining me. I'm Dave Palmer, and we are now in our third to last question of the first half of the Summa. So we've been, doing this for quite some time, well over a year, and thanks for joining me as we journey through the Summa. The cause of grace, okay? Grace is the participation in the life of God, God's free gift to us, where he allows us as rational creatures to participate in his very life. So you would think that that's pretty obvious. In Article 1, whether God alone is the cause of grace, nothing else can cause grace. And that's what he's going to say here. Nothing can act beyond its species, since the cause must always be more powerful than its effect. Now, the gift of grace surpasses every capability of created natures, since it is nothing short of a partaking of the divine nature, which exceeds every other nature, and thus it is impossible that any creature should cause grace. All right, so Mother Mary, being a creature and not God, cannot cause grace. Jesus, of course, can, because he is divine. Article 2, whether any preparation and disposition for grace is required on man's part. Do we have to do anything in order to receive grace? Very interesting question. Grace is taken in two ways. First, as a habitual gift of God. Secondly, as a help from God who moves the soul to good. Now, taking grace in the first sense, a certain preparation of grace is required for it, since a form can only be in disposed matter. But if we speak of grace as it signifies a help from God to move us to good, no preparation is required on man's part. That is, as it were, anticipates the divine help. But rather, every preparation in man must be by the help of God moving the soul to good. Okay, so this brings us back to question 109, where article after article after article, St. Thomas Aquinas says that God's the first mover. God's always going to initiate the grace. Okay, we can cooperate, but it's always going to be started by God. And thus, even the good movements of the free will, whereby anyone is prepared for receiving the gift of grace, is an act of the free will moved by God. Hence it is said that man's will is prepared by God and that man's steps are guided by God. Okay, so God is definitely in the driver's seat. We are not, it isn't predestination. It's not that we don't have any role in this, but God's always going to make the first move. Article 3, whether grace is necessarily given to whoever prepares himself for it or whoever does what he can. So if I say right now, God, I want your grace, I want a participation in your life, I'm going to do whatever it takes, does that necessarily mean that I'm going to get it? Man's preparation for grace is from God as mover and from free will as moved. Hence, the preparation may be looked at in two ways. First, as it is from free will, and thus there is no necessity that should obtain grace, since the gift of grace exceeds every preparation of human power. Okay, it's from God. But it may be considered, secondly, as it is from God the mover, and thus it has a necessity, not indeed of coercion, but of infallibility as regards what is ordained to by God, since God's intention cannot fail, according to the saying of Augustine in his book on the predestination of the saints, that by God's good gifts, whoever is liberated is most certainly liberated. Hence, if God intends while moving that one whose heart he moves should attain to grace, he will infallibly attain it. So once again, all of the initiation, all of the movement of grace really is in God, and we receive it. It's a free gift to us, right? It sounds like predestination, but it's not. Article 4, whether grace is greater in one than in another. Do some people have more grace? And he says, habits can have a double magnitude. One as regards the end or object, as when a virtue is said to be more noble through being ordained to a greater good, okay, like theological virtues. The other is on the part of the subject, which more or less participates in the habit inhering to it. Now, as regards the first magnitude, sanctifying grace cannot be greater or less, since of its nature, grace joins man to the highest good, which is God. But as regards the subject, grace can receive more or less.
inasmuch as one may be more perfectly enlightened by grace than another. And a certain reason for this is on the part of him who prepares himself for grace. So now he's talking about the preparation for grace. Since he who is better prepared for grace receives more grace. Which sounds like a contradiction from what we said earlier, but yes, we can prepare ourselves for grace, but God's always going to be the first mover. Yet it is not here that we must seek the first cause of this diversity, since man prepares himself only in as much as his free will is prepared by God. Hence the first cause of this diversity is to be sought on the part of God, who dispenses his gifts of grace variously in order that beauty and perfection of the church may result from these various degrees. Okay, so no, yes, it is greater in one person than the other, and to some degree we don't have anything to say about that, right? We can prepare, we can ask God for grace, and maybe he'll grant it to us, but ultimately he's going to make the decision, right? Finally, whether man can know that he has grace. This is very interesting. Does man know that he has grace? There are three ways of knowing a thing. First, by revelation, and thus anyone may know that he has grace, for God, by a special privilege, reveals that at times to someone in order that the joy of safety may begin in them, even in this life, that they may carry on toilsome works with greater trust and energy, and may bear the evils of this present life, as it was the case with St. Paul. My grace is sufficient for thee. Okay, I think St. Thomas Aquinas received at the end of his life this grace, where he had the vision of Jesus, right? Secondly, a man of himself may of himself know something, and with certainty, and in this way no one can know that he has grace. For certitude about a thing can only be had when we may judge of its proper principle. Thus, it is by undemonstrable universal principles that certitude is obtained concerning demonstrable conclusions. Now, no one can know he has the knowledge of a conclusion when he doesn't know the principle. Okay, we cannot know God in this life entirely, so therefore, since we can't know him, we can't know the effects of him with certitude, the grace. Thirdly, things are known conjecturally by signs, and thus anyone may know he has grace when he is conscious of delighting in God and of despising worldly things, and inasmuch as a man is not conscious of any mortal sin. So there are signs, and those can be an indication that we do have God's grace. All right, that's question 112, the cause of grace here in the Summa Theologia. Only two more questions that we have in this treatise, in this Prima Secunda, and then we're going to be halfway through the Summa. And at that point, I'm going to take a little break, okay? I'll explain it. I've got something else I would like to share with you, but I'm going to take a little break before going into Secunda Secundae of the Summa Theologia. Thanks for watching. God bless you.